Training the dogs is one thing, but training the people, that's really where it is, because now they can be better to their dogs. Their dogs can trust them more, and they're going to be more successful. And I've done a lot of coaching of people at nationals, and it's really what turns me on, is putting together the dog handler combination and helping them understand each other. And well, success is bound to happen when you can do that.
Well, good evening, everyone. In just a minute, there she is. There's our guest for tonight, Dr. Ruth Ann Lobos. Thank you, Ruth Ann, for being here.
Hey, you're welcome. I'm excited. It's one of my favorite topics.
Awesome. Well, let me just do a little bit of quick housekeeping. Just tell everybody, well, there's a chat box. Give us some shout outs in the chat box. You know, tell us where you're from, what you're cooking, what you're up to. There's a Q&A box as well, and we will take some time to answer some questions. There we go. That's the kind of stuff we want to see, guys. Mark Otis from Missouri. Eric from Georgia. Tell you, it's going to be a great topic. We just, I'm primed for it because, well, in my membership, we've talked about it all month. We just was listening to Dr. Ruth Ann and some of the nutritionists at Purina talk. Just fantastic. So, well, there we go. We got people coming in. We got Arkansas. We got New York. We got Mr. Kuka from Tennessee. How about that? There you are, buddy. Okay. Ruth Ann, a lot of people coming to hear, listen to you talk.
This is good. I hope I sound smart tonight.
Oh, yeah. Carol Cassidy. Carol, great to have you. All right. Well, you're flying in. That's good. Libby, I like to hear that. I feed Purina Pro Plan exclusively. Okay. Well, great. Thanks, everybody. Up, Randy, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I'm headed there tomorrow. I'm going to go see my man Ray Vogt, and National Amateur Championships kicking off. So what a great time to talk about fueling our canine athletes. It's fantastic. So I guess, first of all, I'd like to thank Ruth Ann, everybody else at Purina, Carl Gunzer, Ray Vogt, Scott Smith, everybody that makes this happen. This Purina Pro Class or Masterclass series has been going on for, Robin will probably tell me, but we got Anchorage, Alaska popping in. But it's gotten better and better. And Ruth Ann, this is her second appearance. We talked about First Aid 101. This is our third Masterclass. We're doing 6 a year now. This is our third one. And well, the first half of the year, it just turns out it was ladies half. We had Dr. Sarah Shull from Michigan State University. Then we had Amelia Baxter, young rising superstar Springer trainer. Now we've got Ruth Ann. And then the remainder of the year, well, then it's going to be the boys. We've got Ronnie and Susanna Love Smith. Ronnie Smith and Susanna Love Smith. Clyde Vetter, really well respected, well known, versatile dog trainer. And then, well, my good friend Ray Vogt and I are gonna talk a little retrievers. So that's how we're gonna round out the rest of the year. The schedule is, we're still working around everybody's schedules, but that's what we got coming, everybody. So you know the drill. You got your chat box, perfect. The Q&A box will be for when we have some questions, and we'll get to those. And I guess without any further ado, I'll let Ruth Ann kick it off, and we're going to talk fueling our performance dogs. It's a great topic, and it's ever changing. And boy, oh boy, after spending a little time at Purina, you guys are hustling, making it better, and looking to find better ways to do just that. So, Ruth Ann, thank you, and your turn.
All right. I think I am sharing my screen, and hopefully it decides that it wants to operate here for me, technology wise. So thanks so much, Pat, for having me. And from all of y'all around the entire country for taking time out of your evening or afternoon, depending on whatever time zone you are in, to learn a little bit more. But before we jump into the topic at hand, I just wanted, I've seen this done at a few presentations, so I decided to integrate it into mine as well, give you a little bit of background into who I am. So the top left and top and bottom left-hand corners there, that is my family and extended family. My dad and mom both turned 80 last year, and so we had celebrations for them, and it was a big family affair. So hence the picture in the bottom right-hand corner with an adult beverage or two, in order to tolerate my family for an extended period of time. Many folks can relate. I up there in the top right-hand corner, I like to call Finn. He's my 10-and-a-half-year-old, almost 11-year-old Labrador. He is my gateway dog into the quote-unquote drug of upland game hunting and waterfowl hunting. He unlocked a big portion of my life that I never knew I was missing until I discovered that through him. So I'm very grateful for him. There, just underneath Finn, to the right is Journey. She is our wire-haired pointing Griffon puppy. Well, she's a year and a half now, but so she will be my first real bird dog that I get to train from being a puppy all the way through, hopefully many, many seasons of field together. And then there in the middle is my husband and my son, who is now 10, but I do spend a lot of time looking through that fencing because he is an avid baseball player and plays little league and travel ball. So there's a lot of time spent aside a baseball field. And of course, I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm an LSU Tiger. I bleed purple and gold. I'm very excited about us going to the College World Series here coming up this weekend. Hence also the crawfish there, because if that is my last meal before I move on to the next portion of my life, I will die a happy woman, having consumed boiled crawfish. I still do practice, so I'm a better boarded, I should say certified in canine rehab as well as veterinary acupuncture. So I'm in a clinic a couple of days a month, being a real veterinarian, besides all of the work I do to support ProPlan and our breeder enthusiast team, as well as doing a lot of consumer and customer education. I still like to be a quote unquote real veterinarian. And then to keep me sane, I am a distance runner, and so I do enjoy the marathon as my kind of distance of choice there. So also, if you are on social media, I'll give my little plug to my professional channel that launched about 6 months ago, Pet Vet Ruth Ann. Feel free to follow along. You get a lot of good health tips, as well as some entertainment, with always dogs involved, of course. So without further ado, we will jump into this maximizing nutrition for our hunting dogs and really being able to tap into that performance edge that so many of our dogs that we have by our side are bred for. They live for it. They would oftentimes abandon all regard for safety for themselves because they just love this passion of finding birds for us and working out there in the field, even if if it's a hunt test or field trial or whatever it may be, that really just unlocks that athleticism. We want to make sure first and foremost that they have that foundation of that great nutrition. And really what I want, certainly there will be a Purina spin. I'm not going to, I get a paycheck for them, but really my goal for y'all that are listening is to walk away being able to sort through the marketing noise, understand really what is a good quality pet food that will fuel our dogs for the specific things that we want them to be fueled for. And then also how we sort through. I'm going to just really brush upon top line supplements, and it is the wild, wild west in the supplement world. So I want you to walk away from here with some good guardrails of, again, how to kind of navigate when you pick up the back of a bag or a bottle of, pills of some sort that promise to do all of these wonderful, amazing things for our canine athletes, that you're able to say, is this really worth my money? Is it safe for my dog? And will it do the things I want it to do and that it claims that it will do? So I will also say I'm very passionate about this. And so sometimes I get talking a little bit fast. Feel free, I know Pat's going to be watching the chat. Feel free to either pop something in the chat or, Pat, if you see something, just interrupt. Again, I want to make sure y'all have great keys to success for yourself and for your hunting companion. But it really does all start at the bowl. This is the one solitary interaction that we are guaranteed to have with our dogs at least once a day. And I'll talk about that a little bit later here on the once a day versus twice a day feeding, because that always comes up. But it is, if any of y'all are aware, most of our dogs will not let us go, a day without reminding us that we need to feed them. So it is that one interaction that we are guaranteed to have as dog owners every single day. And how important that is has evolved. So I graduated veterinary school. I was put in veterinary school as a child prodigy, that since I graduated like over 20 years ago, naturally. And when I was in school, we had 4 vital assessments. It was temperature, pulse, respiration, and pain. We as a veterinary industry have evolved, and nutrition is now considered that 5th vital assessment. And what that means is it should be addressed at every single veterinary appointment you have, whether it is just a routine annual checkup, or you're going in for some sort of issue that you have with your dog. It should be talked about, even if it's just as simple of what are you feeding and how much are you being fed, how much are you feeding to your dog. So that is table stakes now in veterinary medicine. And these 2 references on the side, the World Small Animal Veterinary Association, as well as AAHA, which is the American Animal Hospital Association, have set guidelines. And then they also have really great resources for y'all as owners to be able to, again, kind of sort through what makes a quality pet food, what should I be looking for in a pet food, what nutrients are important for my dog. All of that is on these 2 websites. They're fantastic. I can't emphasize that enough if you want to nerd out in the world of pet nutrition. So when we're selecting a pet food, and I'm talking to clients because it is an industry that is extremely lucrative, extremely recession proof. We have data that shows people will sacrifice their own health and nutrition for the health and nutrition of their dogs. And to keep their dog on a specific diet, they would rather eat ramen noodles than change their dog's diet. So with knowing that connection, new pet food companies, like there've probably been 3 or 4 pet food companies that have popped up today in the market. So it's hard for me, even me in the industry, to keep up with all of that. So when I'm talking to clients and they'll say, well, I'm feeding XYZ pet food, is that a good one? And I may not have heard of it. And so I kind of flip it back on them. And I'm like, well, and these aren't guidelines that I just pulled out of the sky. These are also from the World Small Animal Veterinary Association. They're also from AAHA, where there are criteria that should be on the back of the bag of pet food that starts to lean in the direction and gives you more assurance that this is a quality pet food. But what I do tell them is the number one most important piece of information on a bag of pet food is the manufacturer's name and contact information with a phone number. So what that phone number allows us to do is to ask all of these questions. Do you employ a full-time nutritionist? Who formulates your food? We'll talk about AFCO here on the next slide. But how many calories do you have in it? Do you do research on your pet food? Do you do research with your pet food, with collaborations with external parties, things like that? If by law, we are not required to have a phone number on the bag. You're just supposed to have the name of the manufacturer and the address of where it was manufactured, and that's it. But so if there is a phone number, that gives me at least a slight hint that, okay, well, we've got at least one step in the right direction. And what that phone number allows us to do, again, ask these questions. So I oftentimes I'll ask clients, I'm like, well, is there a phone number on the back of the bag? And have you called that phone number? And is there somebody there to actually talk to? Because that is going to be critical. If something pops up, if you have 6 dogs and you open a bag of food and you're feeding it and the 6 dogs all get sick, or maybe you just wonder, why did you put a German Shepherd on the bag and not a Border Collie? Like, it gives you that opportunity for some real human interaction. And that, again, will lean you in the direction of whether or not this is, a good quality food that you're feeding. So the other piece of information that is super important is the AFCO statement that's on the bag of food. Again, if you want to nerd out, that QR code will lead you to AFCO's website. So this is the Association of American Feed Control Officials. They set the guidelines for the nutrient profiles of both feeding various species as well as different life stages. So that statement on the bag is going to let you know, is this complete and balanced, first and foremost? Is it going to give them all the macro and micronutrients that they need? Or is it only supposed to be for supplemental feeding? So something like a treat or a snack or a topper, which are becoming more and more popular in the world. Those are really not supposed to be fed as main meals. So that AFCO statement will let you know that. Then what life stage is it intended for? Is it for growth of a puppy? Is it maintenance of an adult? Is it all life stages? And so all life stages would include not only growth, not only maintenance of the adult, but then also lactation and gestation, which are, again, as we know, one of the most energy demanding times of a dog's life is when they are growing those puppies and when they are feeding those little neonates. That energy demand is intense. So if it's all life stages, that means it's appropriate for all of those nutrient demands as well as adult maintenance. And I will say there are 2 ways that you can get this AFCO statement. It either can be formulated to meat, which means there's a nutritionist somewhere who puts together this formula, this recipe. They put it into an analyzer, and the analyzer says it's this much protein, it's this much fat, it's this much fiber, calcium, phosphorus, all of the macro and micronutrients. It spits out a reading of, and it says, okay, based on this profile, this food is formulated to meet, growth of a puppy. The other way to do it is through animal feeding tests. So this is where you have to feed it to a group of dogs for a certain amount of time, depending on what claim you're going for. And then throughout that, AFCO has protocol that you have to follow with physical exams and weight checks and blood work and things like that. And then at the end of that, you can say, this food is complete and balanced for growth of a puppy through animal feeding tests. What I like, and so to put it into context, if you want a maintenance claim, that's a 26-week study of adult dogs eating this food. And so what I, as a veterinarian, like is, at least I know if it's used, like if we go the animal feeding test route, that we have fed it to live animals and they will eat it. Because again, if you put all the amazing superfood ingredients into a bowl and the dogs won't eat it, it doesn't do anybody a hill of beans of good. And so really it's important. That's first and foremost. And then it's, it is 6 months. To me, it's a sign of the company being willing to invest the time, invest the resources, because you are not only housing those puppy or those, those dogs or puppies, you're also having to feed them. You're also having to run all the tests and follow AAFCO's protocol. So it is a true investment if you are going the animal feeding test route. And so those are all things just to think about. Take that extra, it's literally probably less than 60 seconds to flip over the bag of food, check for the phone number on the bag, and check for the AAFCO statement as kind of table stakes for selecting the pet food that you're going to fuel your canine athlete with. As I mentioned, I work for Purina, so there's going to be a little bit of a bias here. So I do want to empower you with some other resources as well to go if you want to go down the rabbit hole that is pet food. There are all kinds of really great resources out there. I will say one of the ones I really like is the middle one, the Pet Foodology. It's run by Tufts Veterinary School, their veterinary nutrition program, and they've got a lot of really great consumer-friendly language articles on there. Everything from, what's up with grains and grain-free to byproducts to raw to almost anything you could imagine around pet food. They've got a really great article and good research to support it in very consumer-friendly language. Also, the other one, I don't know how many of y'all on here do, but some folks really want to home cook for their pets. I barely have time to home cook for my own self, let alone my pets. So I'm very grateful for the brilliant minds at Purina that have come up with the ProPlan Performance Sport formula to fuel my dogs. But again, some folks really want to home cook. Petdiets.com is a great resource to look for recipes that are complete and balanced, give you guidelines on how to make that happen if you do find yourself either needing to or wanting to home cook. The bottom one there is purinainstitute.com, and that's where the QR code will take you. And this is, again, while it is run by Purina, it is all published research. So the knowledge that we're sharing, which we feel science is much more powerful when shared, is all about peer-reviewed published research that has been done in the area of nutrition. So again, if you want to really get into the nitty-gritty of things, I encourage you to go to that or have it in your back pocket if you find yourself curious about brain aging in dogs or the microbiome or things like that. Purinainstitute.com is a great resource.
Ruth Ann, I couldn't agree with you more. I hadn't looked at it before. After the meeting, I kind of found out about it and I spent some time because we've been talking about it this month. And you're right, it's spectacular. The Purina Institute site, it was just loaded with great videos and information. And I saw you on there too.
Oh gosh, I hope I sounded smart.
Well. Yeah, at some point, I tell you what, and I'm not suggesting we take any questions yet, but they're flying in. So just when you need a little breather, you let me know and we'll jump on a few.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So we've kind of talked about what's on the outside of the bag and kind of who is putting all of this together, but let's talk about what's in there, inside that bag. And I think one of the big misperceptions out there is that our dogs need ingredients. And so we've got to really focus on the chicken or the salmon or the rice or the, corn or whatever it might be. But really what it comes down to is, sure, they may have certain preferences and some dogs may like salmon more than they like chicken, but it's really the nutrients that our dogs and cats need and that we need for that matter, in order to really thrive. And so, but the only way we can get those nutrients is through ingredients as the source. So that's where, again, it's really important to understand who is formulating these pet foods and do they understand all the finer nuances of the nutrients that are involved in the ingredients that they're using to make the pet food. So these are our essential nutrients. They are our macronutrients, and all that means is they are bigger from a molecule size. And then there are micronutrients, which are our vitamins and minerals. For the sake of today, we're going to focus mostly on the left-hand side of the slide here on kind of our macronutrients for our dogs, and really understanding the physical demands that go along with some of the tasks that we ask them to do and that they love to do, and how we support that through nutrition. So we're going to start with protein. I'm going to sound really cool right now when I tell you that protein is probably my favorite of the nutrients, because beyond what we think about protein with building muscle, repairing tissue, our skin is the largest organ in the body. And so that is all foundationally made mostly of protein. So we need, to provide a good source for them in their diets. But it also, what we don't think about often with the role of protein is what it does to support immune health. Immune health. So our antibodies, which fight off viruses and bacteria, all are made of protein. So we need that good protein source, not only for their muscles and their skin and their hair, but then also for their immune system. And goodness knows our sporting dogs are exposed to a whole myriad of things out there on the adventures that we go on together. So making sure that their immune system is up to par is going to be super important. It is a source of energy, certainly more so in our cats, which are carnivores. Our dogs, we know, while they did start as wolves and have evolved, they now actually have the genes to be able to digest protein, to digest carbohydrates. So they are omnivores. They can use protein as an energy source, but cats are much more efficient. That is how they are hardwired to use protein as their primary energy source. It can sometimes provide some satiety for our dogs. I would like to also give a public service announcement for all the Labradors out there who beg on a routine basis, that for some of them, it is not their fault. There was just a study recently that came out that some Labradors actually lack the gene to tell their body that they are full. So they literally do think they are hungry all the time. So if you
I do too. I must have that same gene.
Right. So that does not mean that you can allow them to just, beg on the regular and get away with things like that, if it is becoming a behavioral thing. But you also can maybe give them a little bit of grace that maybe they're lacking that gene and they really do think they're hungry. I do try to encourage my clients when they're telling me this, that I'm like, sometimes they're actually just starving for attention. Especially we can see that in the off season when we start to get a little antsy, so that maybe they're not really hungry for food. They're just hungry for an activity of some sort. And we'll talk about the importance of feeding to the proper amount in just a minute. So when we evaluate protein quality, it's really based on the amount of essential amino acids that protein provides. So what that means is each protein, so the amino acids are building blocks of protein. And there are some that our dogs and our cats need to get through their diet that they can't actually make themselves. So for our dogs, there are 10 of them. I know this is a dog-focused webinar, but I don't want to forget about our cats. They require 11, so they need a little bit extra. They need that taurine in their diet. They cannot make it in their body. And all of these are really important because what happens is the protein comes in, say, in the form of salmon, and it gets broken down into these amino acids, and then it gets built back up into those different proteins, like their muscle and their antibodies and skin and hair and stuff like that. So they need those proper, kind of like bricks in their wall, if you will, to be able to put those structures together in their bodies properly. And some of them they can make in their bodies, and others need to be provided in the diet. And there is no perfect protein. So what you'll find, again, if you flip over the bag of food, you may see it has salmon as the number one protein and number one ingredient. And then as you go down the line, you may see something like chicken byproduct or corn gluten meal or something like that. And that's because that salmon does not provide all the rungs on the ladder that they need for a full ladder. That's on the right-hand side of the screen. So they need to have multiple protein sources. So when you put, a little bit, you put a lot of the salmon, maybe you have some corn gluten meal and some chicken byproduct meal in there, and you put them all together, then you get all of those essential amino acids that that dog needs. And, oh, there we go. So one of the things I mentioned briefly in there, the chicken byproduct, and I just want to make sure we dispel this myth. I think it's starting to die away, but it's still lingering. So there is a myth out there that byproducts are kind of the leftovers, that they are hair and hooves and things that are swept up off of the floor and they serve no purpose for the pet. And so really want to break down. So meat is really that striated muscle. So it is, that steak, that fillet. The meat byproducts are everything else that is still edible. So it is things like the organ meat and blood and bone, but it is not hair and horns and teeth and feces and floor sweepings and things like that. Same goes for our poultry. It is, one of the things I love to call out here is that so if we look at like a chicken byproducts could be necks, feet, intestines, all of that. But one of the things you will never find in pet food is chicken feet. And the reason for that is because it can actually be sold for a higher price for human consumption. And so it will not wind up in pet food. So really, the byproducts which I think is a terrible name, and I would love AFCO to rename it, but it's the non-striated muscle. And in some cultures, it's actually seen very much as excellent cuisine. So, if you want later, Pat, I can share the recipe for haggis. It involves like a sheep's stomach and a suet of a kidney and all kinds of things. But I'm sure we've all had our fair share of, bratwurst or a hot dog. I mean, I grew up in Louisiana, so I suck the head of boiled crawfish, and I've eaten my fair share of boudin and hog's head cheese and all of that, which I think is delicious. But again, it comes down to a cultural thing. So I want to make sure that we dispel the myth that byproducts are less than ideal and less than nutritious for our dogs and our cats. So shifting gears a little bit to function of fat, which is another really important nutrient for our dogs. And it's going to certainly provide that concentrated energy source. It's going to be higher in calories than a protein or a carbohydrate source would be. It is critical that they have fat in their diet so they can absorb those fat-soluble vitamins, especially vitamin K, critical for clotting in our dogs, which we know if they're out there, there's a high likelihood they're going to have a cut of some sort. And so we want to make sure their clotting factors are all up to date and operating in full steam. It does help with a healthy skin coat, particularly our omega-6s are important in those. And then when it comes to our puppies, omega-3 fatty acids, and on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about those, but critical for our brain and vision development in puppies. And there is this balance. So they do help to manage inflammation, and not all inflammation is bad. You want the body to respond when there is an injury, when there is something going on. You want that inflammation because it sends out messages to the rest of the body that, hey, we need to fix what's going on here. But it should be in balance. So those omega-6s, while they may be quote unquote more pro-inflammatory, that's not always a bad thing. But if there is inflammation that now has gotten out of control, like for example, in the case of arthritis, we need those omega-3s to come in and help to dampen that inflammation down a little bit. Also, our fat helps to kind of cushion those organs and serve as insulation. Again, there's a balance to that, and I'll talk about the importance of balancing that insulation there for our dogs to make sure they live a long, healthy life. So here, just kind of wanted to tease out those omega-3s. So those omega-3 fatty acids that help to support brain and vision development in our puppies are the ones that are the marine sources. So the ones that particularly EPA and DHA, those are the ones we know based on research are so very important. And brain and vision development in our sporting dogs, we need that at top notch for all of the things that we love to do together. And again, balancing that inflammation, if there is something that pops up in the skin or the joints, that's where these omega-3s, particularly that EPA and DHA, come in. I do want to call out that while flaxseed is an omega-3 fatty acid, it does not have the anti-inflammatory properties that EPA and DHA do, or that fish oil. So if you're looking to supplement, or you're looking at the back of a bag and it calls out omega-3s, you want to make sure that it's actually fish oil that is the source of the omega-3s, because our dogs cannot convert flaxseed oil into EPA and DHA. It's only somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2 or 3% of flaxseed oil can get converted, and it's the EPA and DHA that are the secret sauce to managing that inflammation and supporting brain and vision development. So when we're talking sporting dogs, and given I mentioned earlier that I'm an endurance runner, so I love to put myself in the hurt locker over 26.2 miles. And before I'm going to do those long runs, and when I'm, going to do that race, I'm loading up on carbohydrates. And that's how we as humans, that is our preferred fuel for endurance. We need that glycogen stored in our muscles. But for our dogs, it's actually fat. So that is their preferred fuel when they are, in the endurance metabolism state. And so what we found with doing some really great research, Arlie Reynolds up in Alaska was critical in this research. But what he found, when that's how we developed the 30-20 sport formula, was at this higher fat level, at that 20% fat, the dogs used and developed more mitochondria. So if you remember, I think most folks remember the mitochondria from biology, that it's the powerhouse of the cell. And it's these little furnaces, and that's what helps them use more oxygen, have greater endurance when they have more mitochondria. And we could maximize the number of mitochondria if we feed them that higher fat diet at that 20%. And so that's the reasoning behind and the research behind why we developed that ProPlan Sport 30-20 the way that we did. Again, to help to provide as many mitochondria in the cells as we could, so that way they have the greatest endurance that they can, and can have more time afield with us. And then lastly, I do want to touch on water. It is one of those little secretly powerful nutrients. It is odorless, it's colorless, it's tasteless. And without it in 3 days, we are all dead, which is like, wow, you would think if something had that much power, it would come in with much more authority and presence, but it's sneaky. But it is involved in almost every cellular function in our dogs' bodies. It's important to keep the dogs cool when it's warm out, and keep them warm when it's cold out. We know that a 3 to 5% dehydration can actually not only affect their endurance, but it also can affect their scenting abilities. So it is critical that we make sure our dogs are hydrated. And once they get dehydrated, it is really hard to come back up. So I am a big fan of trying to kind of pre-hydrate our dogs. So I'll give you an example where, so if we're, say it's December and we are going out to Western Kansas to go chase roosters, and I typically will feed, and we know it's important to feed them the night before. You're going to go on a hunt the next day. And what that allows the dog to do is take that energy that it requires to digest all of those nutrients that we just talked about, let them do that while they're sleeping. And that way the blood flow is going to their intestines. The water is there going into their intestines to help to digest it. And then that way, when we want to go hunt the next morning, or we want to go do that field trial or that hunt test, they have the fuel in their tank already, and that water and that blood flow can stay in their muscles, go to their lungs, go to their heart, where they need to actually have that blood flow to perform at the level that we're asking. What I also do is I float Finn's food. So we will add, I think most of y'all know, but just in case. So I make it like cereal and milk. We pour a bunch of water on his kibble. That way he is pre-hydrating. So that way, again, the next morning, he's raring to go. He's topped off his hydration level, and we can literally hit the ground running. Also, by feeding the night before, I don't want to leave this out. It does help to decrease the risk of bloat. So we don't want that food, that stomach full of food swinging around like a pendulum in their abdomen. It'll too likely that it'll actually flip the stomach itself. So it's much better, give you much more better opportunity if we feed them the night before, float their food to add that water to them. So again, they're hydrated, they've got the nutrients in the right places, the blood flow in the right places, and we can have a successful next day. So to summarize, we want to make sure it's complete and balanced. We've got that protein to build the muscle and support their immune health. We've got the fats in there for endurance, and that healthy skin and hair coat, as well as resilient joints. Before I jump into the correct number of calories and talking about that, Pat, are there any burning questions?
Well, there's a lot of good questions, I'll tell you. Let me pop one up right here, because you were just talking about, and let's see if you can see that. I will pull. There's some. All right. Mark asks, what is your opinion of pre-post workout hydration products versus cool water only?
Yeah, so that's a great one. So I know there are a lot, and when I've just been at a couple of the shows here, and I'm sure I'll see them at DUX coming up in August as well. More and more, I feel like they are popping up, different brands and things like that. I think there are some really key things to consider. One is, our dogs don't sweat like we do to cool our bodies. So, they offload heat by panting. So they don't really have that electrolyte loss that, like, if we're out working on a June day or an August afternoon, things like that, and we're sweating like crazy, we need those electrolytes to replenish. Not so much our dogs. I will say one of the places where I have seen is, I know sometimes our dogs, they get so focused on whatever we're doing. If it is training, or if we're on a hunt, or there is a hunt test happening, they're like, I am so focused on this task at hand. I have no interest in drinking water whatsoever. And so that's where sometimes those electrolyte, so those supplements that are sold for our dogs can sometimes play a role, because they make the water taste maybe more interesting for our dogs. And so that could encourage them to drink. So I think that's a great space for them. If it's going to help their hydration, if you have a dog who's just, again, not so interested in drinking regular water. But, they're right now, we don't have any great research to support that those have any greater benefit than just straight up water.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, you kind of answered this guy, but I'll go ahead and throw it up there anyways. Your opinion on adding water to daily feedings, pros and cons? Well,
sure. Yeah. So, I kind of mentioned it. It's a great way for hydration. It does help to kind of start that breakdown process. And that's where it's my one kind of caveat is, we want to make sure that the dog eats it right away. When you put, which I have never had a dog in my entire life, and I've had dogs since I was like 6 years old, that have never they don't just leave food sit. And so, but if you do, that's one of the key places where if you put water on there and then it sits, that can actually have the food be less digestible because it passes through the GI tract too quickly. But if you pour the water and the dogs eat it right away, which is what happens, I would say, in 99% of the dogs, that sometimes can help just literally start that digestive process. So not so much water has to be dumped in from the stomach, from the intestines to start that breakdown process and the absorption of those nutrients. I do it honestly, even when we're not in hunting season. Finn and Journey both get their food floated with some water every single day.
Perfect. All right. I'm going to grab one more and then I'll let you jump on it again. We talked about torsion or bloat.
Yep.
This question, I'll pull it up here. Many people, including sled dog owners like Dr. Arlie Reynolds, we talked about Ellie, say only feed once a day. But many DVM bloat researchers recommend feeding twice a day. Can you explain the differences? I think she meant to say twice a day. Editing my comment. Many bloat researchers recommend feeding twice a day versus once a day. Your thoughts on that?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, certainly, it is my public service announcement is every dog is unique, and that's, so you need to really tailor what you do to your specific dog. But also when we look at it, there is good research when we are asking them to do high level activities like that, like what, like hunting or a hunt test, or you're going and you're doing retreat, water retrieves, and they're jumping in and out and back and forth. And there is kind of this like washing machine motion that is happening in their bodies. Having an empty stomach is actually much better for them from a risk of bloat standpoint, from an absorption of nutrient standpoint, because their GI tract is not also then in high drive. I know there have been some studies from, I think it's probably 10 or 12 years ago, where they've looked at older dogs that when they're fed once a day and kind of gradually keeps pulling on the ligaments that kind of holds the stomach in place, that those start to stretch more, and that can increase the risk of bloat. And so they recommend feeding twice a day because then you don't have that routine strain of a high volume of food. And I would say it kind of is a balance. So it depends on, I would also say, like the volume of food that is going into their system. And sometimes there are these high drive dogs that are just like, their little metabolisms are like furnaces. And, he's 45 pounds and, during season, he's eating 6 cups of food. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, yes, when you think about that from a physiologic standpoint and the stomach of a 45-pound dog trying to put in 6 cups of food. So in that case, I'm like, okay, well, how about we feed 3 cups of food at, dinner time, say, 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and then he gets 3 cups of food at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So we've spanned out, while it's still the night before, we've kind of broken up that volume so you don't have that big strain and stress on those ligaments.
I never thought of that, actually breaking your feedings up. You think when you break your feedings up morning and night, and it's always, you're right, the challenge. A lot of the people that were dedicated to feeding twice a day, when we had some dogs in training that kind of required that, we'd have to get up at 3 a.m. and do it,
Yeah.
So there was enough time. But even then, there's a lot of undigested food in their system, and that poses a problem. So,
Yeah.
All right, folks, I'll tell you, we are going to get to your questions, so don't be patient. And but I don't. Let's let Dr. Ruth Ann get back to her.
Sure. I know it's been up here for a little bit now, so if people are reading ahead, if you will, besides what we put, what's on the outside of the bag, the nutrients in the inside of the bag in the right balance of nutrients, we also want to make sure that we have the right number of calories. And so really focusing on, this body condition score system that's here, that we actually developed at Purina, but is now accepted as a global standard to evaluating whether or not a dog, we also have a cat version, is in ideal body condition based on research. And what we know is that if you can't, feel their ribs, if they don't have a waistline, if they don't have that abdominal tuck. So when you look at them from the side, their rib cage should be lower than their belly is, that it has some massive effects on our dogs when they are overweight. It is like for them, it's like trying to breathe with a weight vest on. And so that takes more effort. We know it increases their risk for chronic diseases. When we look at, especially our sporting dogs and our canine athletes, with that level of arthritis that is associated with overweightedness, it'll shorten their career. And so really, all of this is come to life. If you don't know about the Purina lifespan study, I would love for you to remember this from now on and tell all your friends and family, because I think this was one of the greatest. It was the reason why when I had the opportunity almost 20 years ago to interview with this company that I could not resist, because this was one of the greatest studies I feel like that we have in veterinary medicine. 48 Labrador Retriever puppies split. They were litter mates, split into two groups. One got to eat as much as he wanted 3 times a day. His paired litter mate was exposed to 25% fewer calories than his litter mate ate the day before. So it was really just a very small difference in calories, about a cup of food difference in consumption. That's all it was, not some massively different amount. And what it did was it added almost 2 years of life, and almost 3 years later that they needed to be treated for chronic conditions like arthritis and diabetes and things like that, if we just fed them to ideal body condition. So I don't see it as much in our sporting dogs, but I have seen it. And so I really, really strongly encourage that we keep our dogs, especially our athletes, in ideal body condition. It may be a little bit harder from a day-to-day to, not give in to those puppy dog eyes, but it has massively awesome repercussions for not only their quality of life, but then also their overall lifespan if we can keep them in ideal condition.
So
But
let me say
really,
something real quick. I'll tell you, it takes time to train yourself to that, and actually looking at the dogs itself. I mean, I've trained professionally for 40 years. And when I met with Arlie and I got more educated on what a truly fit dog looks like, I didn't know, even though I trained all the time. And when I spent more time, when I was watching sled dogs, but when I became more educated on what a really, really well-conditioned dog looks like, then I became better at reading it and I had a better understanding. So I encourage everybody to spend some time and don't take that lightly. It takes some real training on your part to identify that. All right.
Yeah. I try to educate any chance I get on what I call the healthy hug, so that folks can know, because it is hard. I mean, over 50% of our dogs are overweight or obese in this country. So it's hard to see when they look like everybody else's, even though the dog is overweight. So I would, if anybody has questions or, certainly send me a DM of your dog and I will help you figure out if he or she is in ideal body condition. I'm more than happy to do that. But again, like how well, sometimes I'll talk to clients and they're like, I mean, I don't know, like, if this is a good food for him and if he's doing well on it or not, because really though, the proof is in what comes out the backside. So this is another nice fancy tool that we've got from Purina Institute. It is the fecal score chart. And our researchers, I think, were having a bonus day or a funny day when they developed this, because you are going for a number 2 for their number 2. And that lets us know that they're in good hydration level. We don't want a number 1 that's like charcoal briquettes. And, we know their hydration is good. Their absorption of nutrients is good. They are, there's little waste that is coming out the backside. So that to me is an indication, and I'll show clients, I'm like, well, when you're picking this up, does it look like a number 2 on this chart? And that will help to give me insight into whether or not the food is performing well for their dog. So I know we're getting close to an hour here. So we just want to touch really quickly on what can affect that number two that's there, and certainly the microflora. So in the GI tract, there's a mix of bacterial and fungus and viruses, and there are things in there and their interaction. We are literally, as a veterinary industry, just scratching the surface of what we know about this, because when we look at the numbers, over 1 billion bacteria in a gram of feces, and then 50% of fecal weight is actually the microflora. So there is a ton of happenings all in this that is coming out the backside, but then that also lives in that GI tract. And so we're really, both on the human side as well as the veterinary side, scratching the surface of understanding all of the finer interactions of these microflora that are in there. And as y'all are probably acutely aware, there's all kinds of things that can affect the balance of that microflora in the GI tract, mostly stress related, but that stress can come in various forms of stressors, from travel to diet change to, the bad dietary choice out there in the field of whatever dead animal, or Finn has an affinity for all creatures feces out when we're hunting, and so all of that can certainly play a role in the balance of that microbiota in their GI tract. And what happens when they have these stressors, they go from this nice balance of beneficial bacteria to potentially harmful bacteria, to all of a sudden this potentially harmful bacteria is outnumbering the good bacteria. And then we can see things like diarrhea in the field. So that's really where our probiotics come in. They will do the job of the natural microflora that were there. So they help with repelling the antigens and blocking their attachment. They basically can starve out the bad bacteria, and they themselves can produce these substances that make it really unfriendly for those bad bacteria or that potential invader to live and exist in. But I will say, this is my public service announcement for supplements here coming up. We thought the pet food industry was a rapidly developing industry. When you compare it to supplements, it is like, the supplement industry is on fire. And I myself, I give my dog supplements. We'll talk about that in just a second. But that in 2016, it was 33%, 10 to 33% of owners do. Now it is close to 80% of dog and cat owners give their pets supplements. And here's the thing, is that there is very little regulation on the supplements industry. So when you get a recommendation of a supplement from your veterinarian, we are legally liable. So it is our license that's on the line when we make this recommendation. So the reason we do this is because there is little regulation on the supplement industry. So we take our time, do our due diligence on researching the companies behind it, the claims that they're making, the actual ingredient that is that supplement, to make sure not only that you're using your money and spending it in a wise way, but also you're not buying something that could be potentially harmful for your dog. So when we look at, CBD is one of those that is blowing up, and it's good for all kinds of things. And some research supports it is. But again, when we look, 4 of 29 products that were sampled had heavy metal contamination. So that's, again, lead, mercury, things like that, putting your dog at risk. Also, if they don't make sure they pull out all that THC, we again could be, you could be putting your dog at risk for getting sick. So here's when we look at our drug, our supplements, they are not considered a drug. You do not have to get approval from the FDA. They just need to be notified. You got to send them a little note. Hey, we're launching this supplement. So it's on your radar, but we don't have to have any sort of data to support its safety, efficacy, accuracy, anything like that. And that's where our probiotics fall, as well as a number of other supplements. So when we're looking at a good probiotic, we want to make sure that it has these characteristics, right? We want it to be safe. We don't want it to cause disease. We want to make sure it acts like the natural microflora did. And so these are some of the families of probiotics that you may be familiar with. But again, it's really important that you look at the species level as the strain level as well, not just that first Enterococcus or Lactobacillus, because they are very different in their effectiveness. So this was a study that Scott Weiss out of Canada did, and he pulled 25 probiotics off the market. He found that only 2 of those 25 actually had accurate labels and actually had, so meaning they didn't have misspellings and things like that, and that they had what they said was on the outside matched what was on the inside. The 2 that were of those 25, one is still on the market, and that's Fortiflora. The other one was Prostora from Imes, and it's no longer on the market. So when you're looking at probiotics, you want to make sure it has, or any supplement, that it has research to support why you are giving it. I will tell you, so this is a big shift in veterinary medicine where research is telling us that we need to pull back from using metronidazole. It used to be the gold standard when dogs had non-specific diarrhea. We now know that that can leave permanent damage to their natural microflora. So it is now, we are now shifting that the first line of treatment when your dog has non-specific diarrhea and is otherwise bouncing around, doing fine, still running, doing the hunt test, whatever it might be, to reach for a probiotic and or a diet change until the diarrhea resolves. To use and hold back that metronidazole only as a secondary support if the dog gets sick or the diarrhea isn't resolving in about a week's time. So I strongly encourage you to also then have that conversation with your veterinarian if you come in with your Labrador that has diarrhea for an undisclosed reason, that metronidazole is not the first thing that's going home with y'all. So just as a reminder, this is our Fortiflora. It does come in not only tablets, but also packets. It is Enterococcus faecium SF68. It is the most researched probiotic on the market for dogs and cats. So it has a laundry list of papers that support its use. And so it's going to be great for all the things that can upset the microflora balance. And also it does have good data to support its help with immune system, particularly in our cats with herpes, but then also as our puppies are going through their vaccination stages as well. Lastly, real quick, talking about joint supplements, because this is the other kind of big area where supplements play a role. We know osteoarthritis, super common, right? This is not new research that has come out. I mean, this first one where it says it's 1 in 5 dogs over the age of 1 suffer from arthritis. That study was done in 1997. So I would venture to guess that that stat is much higher than, nowadays, especially with the obesity level that we have in our pets. There's certainly a laundry list of factors that put our dogs at risk, with body weight being one of them. And so again, gives you good reason, keep your dogs lean, reduce that level of risk of osteoarthritis, reduce the amount of money that is spent on carprofen and blood work and all of that that's associated when their arthritis gets really ramped up. We also know that it leads, it's a result of when they tear their cruciate. This is an old stat, $1.3 billion from 20 years ago. I would bet that number has tripled now with the amount of cruciates that have torn in our dogs and then led to arthritis. So when we are looking to support the arthritis in their joints, we want to make sure there's something, it helps with their mobility, also supports that cartilage, so those shock absorbers at the ends of their bones, and then also helps to reduce that inflammation that is arthritis. So this is our joint care product. There are also a number of really great joint care supplements on the market, I will say. I think Nutramax is another outstanding company that does good research and good quality control with their supplements. They are, my guys get joint care. They were on Dasaquin. When we came out with this, I switched them over. I did not see any difference. So that really feels good to me. And I know ours has good quality control, ingredient control. We put these ingredients, the glucosamine, the collagen, the hyaluronic acid, and omega-3s in there because they've got data points to help to support their both mobility as well as cartilage support as well as inflammation. And so when we're putting it all together, again, complete and balanced, know your manufacturer, make sure your dog will eat it, keeping an eye on their hydration and certainly gut health, because knowing 80% of the immune system starts in their GI tract, healthy digestion can lead to overall health in our dogs, keeping them in ideal body condition, and then choose your supplements wisely. And so with that, I would say thank you very much. And I would take any questions that we've got. And if anybody knows Keith's shop, that is his lovely little lady, Stella, there when we were up chasing roosters in North Dakota year before last. So I do not encourage or support dogs drinking beer for my PR friends that might see this.
But Keith likes a good beer. I know that. I've had a few with him. Awesome. Ruth Ann, thank you so much. That was fantastic. And I truly appreciate it. I do have some questions, some of which came in, and I want to read the ones that were pre-submitted, and we're going to start with that.
Okay.
All right. First of all, and I'll read this slowly and I'll read it again, as this is a little bit of a longer one. First of all, thank you for offering this masterclass. In full disclosure, I do not own a working retriever. Okay. Well, these are all breeds. I train and trial border collies in sheepdog events and live on sheep ranch in the Western United States. My question is related to how to acclimate dogs working in hot weather. I've heard that dogs and other mammals will develop heat protection proteins when gradually exposed to working in the heat. Is this true? And if so, how do I optimize it?
It's a great question. I will say that I think, there are, and I was just having this conversation about my own dogs, because as y'all saw, I have a yellow Labrador, and then I've also got the wire-haired pointing Griffon, and Journey runs so hot, and I'm already concerned. I'm like, we haven't even hit summertime here. I'm based out of Boulder, Colorado, and it gets hot, but it's not Texas hot. It's not, Missouri hot. And so one of the things that I've been working on, and when I was chatting with a friend, is keeping them, actually wetting them down right before you're going to get started for a work session can help them to lower that body temperature before it gets ramped up. So it's almost like that pre-hydration, where we're trying to give them all the water they need before they get dehydrated, because it's a tall hill to climb. And so they will, but back to the original question is, they will acclimate just like we as humans do as well. You get more tolerant. I think it is important to, one of the things people talk about is, if there's a lot of work happening in the heat or the cold, for the really cold for that matter, and then we bring them back and they're living in our house at however cool you keep it, 70 degrees, climate controlled like that. Sometimes that can slow down that acclimation process because they're not, kind of in that warmer environment all the time. So that's something to think about if they are in a kennel situation. And I'm not advocating to run it at 90 degrees, but to keep it maybe a little warmer than you would in your house. So again, their body is just a little bit more challenged in a controlled fashion to help to build that heat endurance.
Great. Thank you. All right. I think you may have answered quite a bit of this, but I'm going to read this anyways. Let's talk protein to fat ratio. I've always heard 30-20. protein to fat, but calories only came to mind after a young trial bitch was running too lean. I couldn't keep weight on her. What is your take on fat to protein and calorie intake? It's very hard for me to find a good dog food with a high calorie content.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm a big fan based on the research that was done out, on 30/20 sports to really hone in on supporting that muscle mass, supporting that endurance key. For our dogs that are those high burners, if we do need to add that kind of like midnight snack or that evening extra cup before they go to bed, sometimes that can add on. Uh, looking at their environment, and if they are a high anxiety dog and they're always just like going, I see this a lot with English pointers and German short hair pointers, probably more so than Labradors, but it still happens. Looking at things that we can do to help to calm them and relax them in that, so that way their metabolism can come down. I think that's going to be another key piece to managing their weight for those high burners.
Great, thank you. All right, so this question actually was pre-submitted. All right, let me pop this up. And popped up here, so I'm going to throw it up on the screen. Question: brown rice and beans are completer amino acids, at least for humans. Adding salmon combined would that give the dogs a complete diet? Lots of salmon in Alaska. So obviously your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would also say I'm not a boarded veterinary nutritionist, but in my years, almost 2 decades of working with Purina, that would not register with me as a complete and balanced diet. More so looking at the micronutrients that could be missing, and also, with the beans, I'm not 100% sure that that's going to give them the essential amino acids that they would need. And so I would be really hesitant to run a dog on that and think that we're not going to be missing out on some of those really key nutrients.
Great, thank you. And here's the fourth question. Comes from some great friends of mine,
Okay.
and really Jane and Jerry Potopia from Oregon. I don't know, they were hoping to be on tonight, but this is, and the Jerry's been training high-end field trial retrievers for 50, 60 years, 50 years plus. Anyways, here we go. Hi, Pat. Regarding tomorrow's online class, I've been adding collagen peptides type 1 and 3 to diets of our older and derby competitors. Otherwise, Purina Pro Plan 30/20 salmon and rice and joint and prebiotic supplements make up their meals. I don't want to be wasting money or over supplementing. All the dogs look great, and the collagen peptides have been added for insurance. Comments would be appreciated if there is time, and I do hope to be on tonight's class. So, all right. So they want to know if the type 1 and 3 collagen peptides is worth it. And your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step would be to look at the manufacturer and make sure there's some sort of third-party guarantee that what is on the outside is what's on the inside. Because regardless of if it's collagen or omega-3s or whatnot, we need some sort of third-party verification. Otherwise, who knows? It could be pixie dust that they're giving. And we do know, I mean, with that said, whether it's us or for our dogs, there is the placebo effect, and the placebo effect is very real, and our dogs feed off of our energy. So if they think that the dogs are doing well and looking good, and that leads them to be more relaxed at home, the dogs are picking up on that vibe of them being more relaxed. And so it may all be working, but I think that would be really the first place to start is, is there a manufacturer guarantee of the collagen and whatever other supplements that they're using for sure. And then there's varying research about the collagen and types of collagen that are out there. I think it again goes, there's nothing that says collagen hurts them. And if they have the perceived, the perception that it is beneficial to them, then I say go for it. But got to make sure that what's on the inside is what you're putting in, or what's on the outside is matching what's on the inside.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, here we go. We got a few more that popped up. What's your opinion of GABA supplementation?
I guess I don't know what GABA is. I immediately go to gabapentin, but I'm sure that's not what Deb
Right.
is.
Yeah, I wondered myself. Okay, so that's Deb. Deb, if you want to clarify or make that a little clear with a follow-up question, we'll jump on that. All right. Well, here's another good friend of mine, old-time field trialer, great friend, Dr. Ed Acock. I'm Ed Acock, an old, not so old Ed, retired veterinarian and lifetime retriever enthusiast. Do you think there's a nutritional component to cranial cruciate ligament rupture? Specifically, is manganese a significantly important enough component? Oh, let me keep that up there. Is manganese a significantly important enough component to be worthy of supplementation to the normal performance dog diet? I give my 2 field trial dogs Lycoplex 2. Do you think there is any benefit in that product?
I'm going to say I am not well versed enough on manganese to know as far as that goes. And I'm also not familiar with Ligaplex. So no, so I don't know. I cannot, I would say intelligently answer that question.
Very good. All right. Well, Ed, I know Ed's researched it, so he
Yeah.
obviously thinks it's worth it. And Ed, thank
Yeah.
you for that
Yeah,
question.
I'm going to take that as a follow-up for my own knowledge. I think the biggest nutritional component to cruciate disease is probably the over supplementation of calories in our dogs. And we are learning more. There are some genetic components as well, but I think sure enough, the obesity epidemic that is in our pets is probably our biggest risk.
All right, here we go. Here's an interesting question that comes up. Bloat researchers have found some SNPs that seems to identify genes that help prevent bloat, and some genes that might make dogs, including dogs of certain breeds, be at more risk. Do you recommend different foods and feeding schedules, protocols for dogs of breeds that might have been identified? I need to keep that up a little longer. Identified with genetic SNPs, which might put them at a higher bloat risk.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
learning something.
great question. I would certainly say if they're with the dogs with higher bloat risk, that is again where we want to make sure their stomachs are as empty and they have had their main meal. It takes about 4 to 6 hours to empty from the stomach and a good 18 hours to get through the GI tract, sometimes a little bit longer than that. So if we can make sure we have, I like to give a solid, 12 hours if we can from digestion. And then there's also, if they are at higher risk, like I said earlier, there's, splitting those meals up. If it is a high volume that you are having to put into your dog, splitting that up into like a 4 and a 2 cup feeding, or something of that ratio where it will not have that big stretch or that high volume in an area of in a dog that's already has the genetic tendency to have bloat.
Okay, thank you. All right, and we get a lot of feeding questions here, which I guess that's what we're talking about. The data related to meal size and subsequent exercise in dogs is fairly outdated and needs to be increased meal frequency, but decreased meal size is beneficial for managing blood glucose and minimizing gastrointestinal upset for dogs at working events. Would you comment on that? Were you
Yes,
able to see that whole thing? Let me pop it up again.
I would say that our data is very outdated, and that this is an area that I know Purina is investing in, is really We've got data in sled dogs with, and Arlie and others have done great research in that. We've got data in racing greyhounds, which are slowly becoming extinct. But then we don't really have solid data on these sporting dogs that are doing hunt tests, that are, these if they're guide dogs, or just, you're just you just do this as a hobby, you're a hobbyist hunter. We don't have great understanding of that that type of athlete. And so this is an area we're investing at from Purina. We've made in the last year, we've made 3 very sizable partnerships with Cornell University and University of Mizzou, as well as Texas A&M, to really help to better understand both the microbiome and also the physical and nutritional needs of these canine athletes. Because yes, I agree, our data is outdated, and we need to do better for our dogs. And so we're pushing in that space, as well as there's well, now it's probably 10 years old, but it's still one of the newer specialties within veterinary medicine called the American College of Veterinary Sports Medicine and Rehabilitation. And that area is also heavily looking at more so from a physical standpoint, and an arthritis standpoint and things like that. But the more we understand these canine athletes holistically, the better we can do to address them, not only through nutrition, but then also joint care, strength exercises, all of the things to help them, keep moving and be aside a field with us as long as possible.
Great, thank you. All right, I have the follow-up on the GABA.
Yeah.
Here we go. GABA
Okay.
or gamma, if you can go ahead and read that. And I can't even pronounce all these words.
Gamma aminobutyric acid.
Okay, please go ahead. Can you read it? Go ahead and read it out loud.
Yeah, it's a amino acid in the brain that acts as neurotransmitters. The primary inhibitory neurotransmitter
I'll get it back up.
In the central nervous system, meaning it helps to reduce or prevent nerve signals. I am familiar with it. I just am unfortunately not as familiar with supplementing it and any published research to support its benefits. So I will take that as a follow-up as well to explore more.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to jump around. Are there differences in the cat and dog Fortiflora formula?
Only a very small difference. So the cat formula has added taurine in it. But if your cat is on a complete and balanced diet for cats, they can eat the dog version and dogs can eat the cat version. It's still the same concentration of the same Enterococcus faecium SF68. So it's the same bug at the same concentration. And so they can be interchangeable for sure.
Excellent. Wow, there's a ton of questions here. I'm sorry to keep you going, but it's good. We've got a really educated audience, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I love it.
Okay. Well, I fed my working dog Purina Pro Plan wet in order to help him stay hydrated, since he isn't one of the to tank out on water. I've heard that protein is measured on a dry matter basis. Does that mean that canned dog food is very high in protein? I've also heard that high protein can lead to hyperactivity. What are your thoughts on, I guess we're talking about feeding canned food versus dry?
Yeah. So a dry, you're absolutely spot on that the protein levels, they are going to look very different in a wet formula versus that dry formula. But when they are on a dry matter basis, that basically means they're the water is taken away out of the equation, and so it will those protein levels should equal out there. The canned food is going to be about 70 to 80% water. So they are going to be, as they were doing, kind of eating their water that's there. And so it's a great way for dogs who are not good drinkers. It's also a great way, sometimes dogs when they're on multi-day hunts, or dogs when they travel, are not good eaters. Supplementing, or kind of topping their dry kibble with some canned food can be another great way to help to entice them to eat like that. So I'm a fan of the wet food when it's when it's needed. And I mean, and people ask them, like, there's nothing wrong with feeding canned food as the whole diet. It's not, it is complete and balanced. It's not just a topper if you're feeding like a Pro Plan wet or something like that. It's just going to be a greater volume of food that you're going to have to feed in comparison to the dry food that's going to be more calorically concentrated, because that water is removed in the extrusion process.
Very good. Okay. Here's a question about this person uses I feed Purina Pro Plant and I supplement it with Dynavite. The Dynavite really seems to help my dog's coats. Are there food-based things I could add to Purina instead of Dynamite? Not that I need to make a change, just want to do what's best for my dog's health.
Yeah. And I think we all want to do what's best for our dog's health, which is why everybody's on the call. So yeah, I mean, there's oftentimes when we look at what the skin needs, and there will be dogs will have, just like people will higher demands based on their specific metabolism and all of that. And so some dogs may need a skin supplement or a joint supplement or a special digestive formula or something like that. But when we break down what the skin is, we're based on, we talked about it being made of protein, but then there's also omega-3s and omega-6s and zinc that are all important for kind of how the cells of the skin are put together, how they kind of can flex and move and things like that. So looking from a food-based perspective, when I'm talking to a client that has maybe some skin sensitivities or higher needs of their skin and hair coat, I'll say, well, let's look to a fish-based diet, because they tend to be higher in those omega-3s, oftentimes higher in omega-6s as well. And that can be sometimes enough to have them be less sensitive to whatever is causing the inflammation in their skin.
Great. Okay. All right. Good old Russ Patton's got a question here. Russ says, when I was running NSTRA, it became common practicing to rendering down chicken skin and fat, adding it to the feed the day before competing, because it became a reliable source of energy during long races.
Yeah, I mean, I would say sometimes I cringe a little bit as a veterinarian when they're being fed straight like chicken skin and chicken and fat, because my head immediately goes to, oh my gosh, are we going to overload the pancreas and we're going to get pancreatitis and that sort of thing. But again, if the dog is not sensitive to fat and they need those extra calories, as long as the bulk of their calories is coming from a complete and balanced diet on a consistent basis, I'm okay having, those things added for their fuel. Just know that sometimes that high fat, if they are not accustomed to it, or they are a breed that can be more sensitive to fat, that could tip them into pancreatitis. So if we have folks who are like, oh, maybe I want to try that, I would, my word of caution would be to dial it up very slowly and make sure the body can adjust and the pancreas can adjust, because that's the main organ that is responsible for breaking down fat. And it can get real angry real fast if all of a sudden it has to do extra work. So just if you're going to experiment with that, I would say start very slowly and then cautiously ramp up.
Very good. Scott asks, what are your thoughts on post-training recovery snacks? If so, what might you recommend?
Yeah. So my favorite post and agree that getting some calories into them, and that's again where it's beneficial for that after or that evening feeding, is getting some calories into them 30 minutes after they've cooled down is a great idea. I love, honestly, just using kibble as their recovery. It's got great protein, fat. Their cells, their GLUT4 receptors, which are where the energy comes in, are open for about that 30 to 45-minute time frame, just like it is for people after exercise. So if we can give them good protein and good fat to refuel and replenish, that's fantastic. So that's my recovery fuel of choice. I know there are others, there's other products on the market. Don't get me started about the bars that we used to have, because I loved them and I would love them to come back. I haven't banged that drum loud enough apparently yet. But I know there are others out there, but still, looking at kind of the ease of access, knowing that they like the food, and knowing that it is going to be complete and balanced for them, giving them that kibble as their recovery snack, I feel like is kind of a no-brainer.
Good stuff. All right, give you a little shout out here. This is Nina Duflo. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and time. Love the discussion. And thank you for your Metro announcement.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining.
You bet. All right. This is a good little quick question. Should I use joint product even if my dog does not have arthritis?
Yeah, great question. So we don't have any data that says if you give your dog a joint supplement before they start with arthritis, it will prevent it. But I think about kind of how arthritis works, and from a physiology standpoint, when there's arthritis in the joint, it's a very enclosed, encapsulated environment. And so if there gets a small little tear or an insult to their cartilage or their joint, it's kind of like this encapsulated fire. So if we can have them where they've already got those supplements on board that help to support their cartilage, that help to support their mobility, that help to dampen that fire, and all of that is already on board before it gets ramped up. In my head, it makes logical sense that would help to slow down that process. And just knowing what our sporting dogs put themselves through voluntarily, what we ask them to put their bodies through, all of that lends itself to a tweak or a strain or a sprain here and there. And we've got no data to support that it's harmful. So I would say if you've got the financial means, you've got the time, you've done the research on what joint supplement you want to go with, I say go for it. I started Journey. We got her, when she was 8 weeks old. And I started her on a joint supplement I'm like, might as well give her the building blocks and the tools in her toolbox if she needs them. And, it just makes sense to me.
Great. Here's one good question. Is it recommended to supplement Florida every day for healthy gut, or only when having digestive issues?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, you can certainly use it every day. It's kind of like us, drinking an Activia or your probiotic of choice. And there are some dogs who just need that because whatever their issue is in their GI tract that doesn't stay stable, they need that kind of extra support. Flora does have a 48-hour kind of lifespan in the GI tract. So it'll stay there, and then after 48 hours, it's literally flushed out the back door. So sometimes if you need to give it to your dog chronically, you can look at trying to space it out every other day. During a hunting season or heavy training season, Finn and Journey get it every single day. And then I kind of, when we're in the off season, I kind of use it situationally, almost as if like a Pepto-Bismol-ish for dogs is Flora. And so again, it could be used every day, or it can just be used situationally as well.
All right, I'm going to give you two more questions because I kept you way longer than I thought, than I promised you, but it's because you're so popular and you've done such a great job. Okay. Does Performance 3020 have joint support already?
Yeah, so it will have some, but nothing at a therapeutic level that I would say would make a strong support of their joints. And so that's why, again, I'll like my guys are on Sport 30/20 Salmon, and they get the joint care supplement as well, because it's really it's not at a therapeutic level in the food alone.
Perfect. Last one.
Okay.
Your opinion on adequate supplementation.
Yes. I love Adequan. I think it is fantastic for, I use it more. This is one where I kind of use it more in my older dogs, versus, starting them when they're young, but it's got great research to support, its effectiveness in joint health and mobility. And then it's kind of one of those where I feel like once I start them on it, I keep them on it. And I don't know if that's because I'm just selecting the patients that are older, and so that's the way it is, or if it's just one of those where it like really makes that big of a difference. But I'm a big fan, for those older, more so in the older guys, that I still want to keep moving and grooving.
Okay. I've got one last appeal. All right, because my man Russ Patton, I got to make sure he gets this. Please ask her about GDV dog. It's an issue I'm dealing with in competition. Hold on, let me see what Russ.
As far as I was like, we talked about bloat, or his specific dog.
Okay, all right, here we go. Let me give you this. I have a GDV dog that is okay. The problem I was having trying to figure out the best way to train him and compete him and not have him bloat. AKC recommends removing water an hour before feeding and giving water an hour after they eat. What is your thoughts on this?
So he's already gastropexied. It looks like, that is pexied.
Yeah.
Yeah. Train him incomplete and not have him bloat. AKC, removing the water. I wonder, my only question would be why removing the water an hour before feeding? Because in my head, when I think about like if he's drinking water, then the kibble's being absorbed, the water's in there, and the kibble can come in and already kind of have a little bit of sauce to get broken down with, that would help the digestive process. I would say, I would say feeding him before training, like hours, at least, 8 to 12 hours before training would be ideal. That's how I would do it. He's also at much lower risk if he's already pexied to bloat again, because that stomach in theory should be tacked down pretty good.
Fantastic. Well, I'll give you a last shout out. This is not a question,
Okay.
but Scott says, as a practicing healthcare provider, licensed athletic trainer, works with athletes, information makes great sense. Thank you so much for these classes. And thank you, Ruth Ann, for taking your time. I know you're on the road. Tell me you're at the 25th anniversary of what?
Yeah, so I'm in New York City right now. It's the Tribeca Film Festival that's happening, and if any of y'all have seen the movie Best in Show, if you have not, I highly recommend it. It is hilarious, and having spent a good portion of time in supporting our breeder group and being in behind the scenes of dog shows, it's fairly accurate, even though it's supposed to be a bit of a spoof. And so this is the 25th anniversary of the movie, and there's a cast reunion that's happening. But this movie also inspired, if any of y'all watch the National Dog Show on Thanksgiving Day, this movie was actually the inspiration for the National Dog Show that we put on. So I'm supporting that tomorrow afternoon.
Well, great. Well, have fun in New York. Thank you so much. I kept you up way later than I said, but you did an awesome job and great questions. And we'll good night, everybody. Thank you again. Thank you, Purina, for everything you do. Thank you, Ruth Ann, for all you do. It's inspiring. I came back from our meetings with Purina, and I was just more excited than ever about things that are going on. So good night, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
All right, we'll see you guys.